To the world, I am a 72-year-old widow succumbing to Parkinson's. To my daughter and her husband, I am just a liquid asset. I watched Sarah hide my passport while pretending to comfort me, documenting my confusion for the world to see. But the game changed when I found the drugs she was slipping into my tea, meds meant to erase my mind. When I showed her the bottle, she didn't even flinch. She just smiled and told me I was confused again. She thinks I'm a prisoner, but she forgot I was a senior investigator for decades. Listen to the end to hear how I handled it, and subscribe to hear more of my journey. The smell hits me first. Rotting citrus and wet coffee grounds, the particular perfume of a kitchen trash can that hasn't been emptied in 3 days. My kitchen. My trash can. I've been standing at this counter for 40 years, and I know every sound this house makes, every draft, every creak of the third floorboard from the top of the stairs. I know the difference between the smell of a home that is lived in and the smell of a home that is being dismantled. I almost don't reach in. Almost. But 30 years of pulling documents from places people didn't want them found has made the motion reflexive, the way a surgeon's hands remember a suture even when the mind has drifted elsewhere. My fingers close around a folded sheaf of papers wedged between a lemon rind and the remains of Sunday's scrambled eggs. The paper is damp at one corner, just enough to make a weaker woman hesitate, to make her drop it back and pretend she never saw it. I don't drop it. Durable power of attorney. The header prints itself on my brain before I've finished unfolding it. And there, at the bottom of the second page, above the notary's embossed seal, my signature. Or what was once my signature. The signature I practiced for 30 years on claim forms and depositions and certified affidavits, the signature I spent a decade perfecting until it flowed from the pen like a single, unbroken breath. Edith Marie Parker. The capital E sweeping up and back. The P with its particular closed loop that my husband once said looked like a question mark turned brave. She has it perfect. Every flourish. Every proportion. And that is exactly how I know it is a forgery. The Parkinsons took my loops 8 months ago. The capital E now staggers across the line like a man walking into wind. Sarah has reproduced the woman I was before my own nervous system began its quiet betrayal, and she's done it with the kind of care that reveals premeditation, not a rushed job, not a single attempt, but practiced, refined, deliberate. She has been studying my old signature. She has been practicing. My heart slams against the inside of my chest, one hard knock after another, and I am suddenly and acutely aware of the grandfather clock in the hallway, counting out the seconds with a patience I do not currently possess. I smoothed the paper against the counter. I read every line with the speed of someone who has spent decades finding the operative clause buried in page 9 of a 40-page document. Healthcare decisions. Financial management. Residential placement. Residential placement. The words sit in my stomach like stones. I fold the paper carefully, precisely, the way you handle evidence, and I tuck it under my cardigan against my ribs. My right hand is trembling. I press it flat to the cool granite until the tremor slows. I wait. She comes in from the hallway 30 seconds later, carrying the practiced ease of a woman who believes she is the only actor on the stage. Peach perfume, the drugstore kind, sweet and slightly chemical, nothing like the things I used to buy her at Christmas. She's wearing the concerned daughter expression I've been cataloging for weeks, brow furrowed, mouth soft, eyes doing the particular sliding away maneuver that means she is managing rather than seeing me. I didn't sign this, Sarah. I hold the paper out. My voice is level. Clinical. The voice I used to use when I told an insurance adjuster that his client's accidental house fire had been set from the inside. She doesn't flinch. That's the tell. An innocent person flinches. Instead she exhales, a long, theatrical sigh that carries the full weight of a caregiving performance, and sets her coffee mug down with the careful deliberateness of someone who has rehearsed this scene. Mom. The word is a diminutive, a pat on the head. We talked about this 3 nights ago. You were having a foggy episode. You were upset about the property taxes, and you specifically said, that you wanted us to handle the financials while you focused on getting better. She's reaching for the paper now, her fingers extended, her eyes not on the document but on my face. Looking for the flicker. The crack in the foundation where her version of reality can be inserted. Dr. Milligan said stress is one of the biggest. Dr. Milligan has not been my physician for 6 months, I say. You know that. Her fingers close on the edge of the paper. I let her take it. She isn't looking at her mother. I understand that now with a clarity that is almost peaceful, the way a diagnosis can bring peace after years of unnameable symptoms. She is looking at an obstacle. A line item. A square on a legal diagram that must be moved from one column to another before the end of the fiscal quarter. I was a fraud investigator for 30 years. I built my entire career on recognizing the exact expression currently arranged on my daughter's face. I need my study. I need the mahogany desk with its locked center drawer, and the landline telephone that Brian hasn't yet thought to disable, and the particular quality of quiet that 4 walls of bookshelves provide, the sensation of being surrounded by things that cannot lie to you, that mean exactly what they say. I turn toward the hallway. Brian fills it. He doesn't announce himself. He simply materializes in the doorframe the way large, predatory things materialize, occupying space as a declaration, a territorial staking. Broad shoulders stretch the seams of a fleece vest that cost more than my first car. His hands are in his pockets, which is the most dangerous posture. It says I don't need my hands, I'm that certain. He doesn't touch me. He doesn't need to. Easy there, Edith. His voice is the register men use when they want to seem reasonable while being unreasonable. A radio announcer's warmth with a sheriff's subtext. You look a little unsteady this morning. Maybe the living room's safer for you right now. You don't want another fall. I have not fallen. Not once. He knows this. He says it anyway because the statement serves double duty. It implies a history of falls for any hypothetical observer, and it plants the word fall in the air between us like a flag claiming ground. He is 6'1" and 220 pounds, and he is standing 4 inches from my face, and I can smell my late husband's Macallan on his breath at 9:15 in the morning. My Macallan. The bottle from the locked liquor cabinet. The one I haven't touched since the funeral because opening it alone felt like a kind of surrender. He's colonizing the house by increments, moving through its rooms and its stores the way an army moves through a captured territory, casually, possessively, as if the previous ownership is already a historical footnote. I make my face go soft. Uncertain. I let my eyes lose their focus for exactly the number of seconds it takes to suggest a woman being gently overwhelmed. Of course, I say quietly. The living room. I shuffle past him toward the wingback chair. I settle into the chair the way a woman settles who is tired and slightly confused and grateful for a soft surface. I smooth my cardigan over my knees. I look at the ceiling the way people look at things when their mind is drifting. I am looking at the smoke detector. It took me 4 seconds to find it. The detector is original to the house. I had the whole system installed in 2003, and I know the exact texture of the white plastic housing, the precise curve of its vented edge. There is a new glint inside the left vent. Small. Positioned for a wide-angle lens. The kind of button camera that comes in a kit with a motion-sensing transmitter and retails on Amazon for $68. I know this because I bought the same model 6 weeks ago. I keep my face aimed at a neutral middle distance while I perform the inventory. They have placed it for maximum coverage of the sitting area and the entrance to the hallway. From that angle, the camera can see my chair, the side table, and the door to the study. It cannot see the window alcove. It cannot see the far corner of the dining room. I tuck both pieces of information into the cold storage compartment of my mind where I keep things that matter. My right hand jumps suddenly against my knee, the tremor arriving without warning, the way it does, the way a rogue wave arrives, and I press the back of my hand hard into the wool of my cardigan, using the friction to still it. Not because I'm afraid they'll see weakness. Because I refuse to let them see anything they can use. Under the smoke detector's patient, recording eye, I let my face go blank and breathe. They are in the kitchen. I can hear their voices through the wall, not words, just the particular music of two people who believe they are alone, the dropped volume and the casual intimacy of co-conspirators at ease. The word liquidity arrives clearly, and then the quarterly, and then Sarah's laugh, which is not a happy sound but a releasing sound, the laugh of someone discharging tension. I use the window. The sitting room faces the side garden, and the reflection in the glass gives me a reversed image of the room behind me, the sideboard along the far wall, the shelves, the cabinet that has held the same objects in the same positions for the better part of 2 decades. The Ming vase is gone from the sideboard. I bought it at an estate sale in 1998 for $1,200 and spent a pleasant afternoon having it appraised for 3 times that. It is blue and white, Kangxi period, and it has sat in the same spot on that sideboard for 26 years without moving except to be dusted. The silver tea service is gone too. My grandmother's. Edwardian, 8 pieces, monogrammed MAH for Margaret and Harcourt. In its place, a ceramic set in a shade of industrial beige that I have never seen before and that has, from this distance, the particular unloved quality of a thing purchased to fill a visual gap rather than because anyone wanted it. I do not move my head. I continue to appear to look at nothing. My bank statements, the paper ones I specifically request because I distrust anything that can be altered without a physical trail, are usually in the top drawer of the secretary desk by the window. The drawer is slightly open. The drawer is empty. I am a forensic investigator. I know how to read a crime scene, and I know how to read one without looking like I'm reading it, and what this crime scene is telling me is, they are not waiting. They are not planning. They are already in motion, already liquidating, already cannibalizing the estate while its owner sits in her own living room with her hands folded in her lap. They are stripping the carcass while the heart is still beating. The rage that moves through me is a cold thing, not hot. Hot rage is sloppy. Hot rage leads to confrontations that can be filmed and characterized as erratic behavior, and submitted as Exhibit A in a competency hearing. Cold rage is a scalpel. Cold rage is patient. I smooth my cardigan again. I look at my hands. The numbers never lie, I think. People do. Brian comes back in on a wave of his own certainty, tapping a stylus against the edge of his tablet with the rhythm of a man who enjoys the sound he makes in rooms. Good news, Edith. He sits on the arm of the sofa, not in a chair, not with the full commitment of someone who intends to stay, but perched, transient, which means he's delivering something and then leaving. We managed to get you an appointment tomorrow morning. Dr. Aristhorpe over on Meridian. Just a quick cognitive baseline. Make sure we've got all your ducks in a row. He smiles. His eyes do not participate in the smile. It's covered. Nothing to worry about. The name lands with the weight of a specific, targeted thing. Aristhorpe. Gerald Aristhorpe, MD, whose license had been the subject of an informal complaint to the State Medical Board in 2019. A complaint that went nowhere because the complaining physician retired and the file was quietly archived. Aristhorpe, who operates a boutique senior wellness practice, in a building that also houses, on the 4th floor, a memory care facility called Meridian Gardens that charges $11,000 a month and has a waiting list that, curiously, always seems to have one opening available on short notice. I know this name because I spent 45 minutes researching it 2 weeks ago when I found his business card in Brian's jacket pocket, the pocket of the jacket he'd left hanging on the back of the dining chair, the pocket I happened to check while he was in the shower because I am a retired insurance fraud investigator and checking pockets is simply what I do. A cognitive baseline. How thoughtful. How comprehensive. If Aristhorpe finds me incompetent, or, more precisely, if Aristhorpe is paid enough to certify incompetence regardless of what he finds, the power of attorney in Sarah's forged, damp corner document becomes operative, and I become a legal dependent, and the door to this house closes from the outside and does not open again from my side. That sounds fine, I say quietly, vaguely, in the voice of a woman for whom things sound fine because she has stopped evaluating. Brian nods. Satisfied. He taps the stylus twice more and leaves. The phone disappears 20 minutes later. Sarah does it the way she does everything, framed as an act of love, executed with the efficiency of a bailiff. Give me the phone, Mom. Her hand is out before she's finished the sentence, palm up, the gesture of someone who expects compliance and has already moved on mentally to the next item on the list. The blue light's bad for your sleep, and I read that it makes the tremors worse. I'll put it somewhere you can reach it if you need it. I look at my iPhone, the contacts list, the photographs, the cloud storage where I have been quietly backing up 30 years of case notes that I've been digitizing for the past 18 months. Marcus's number. 3 contacts at the Department of Insurance who would recognize my name. The jitterbug lands on the side table before I've finished the thought. Chunky plastic, primary color buttons, a font size designed for people who have been assessed as unable to manage complexity. It dials 3 numbers, Sarah. Brian. 911. A triangle with no exits. I look at it for a moment. I look at my daughter. Thank you, I say. She takes the iPhone and slides it into her tote bag and the magnetic clasp closes with a sound like a period at the end of a sentence, and I sit with my hands folded and my expression soft and vacant and I breathe. They are erasing me by degrees. Every removed object, every disabled device, every door that now requires permission to open is another sentence in the story they're writing, the story of a woman who could no longer manage, who needed to be managed, who surrendered her sovereignty in increments until there was nothing left to surrender. I have been watching people write that story about other people for 30 years. I know exactly how to make them regret it. The house settles into its nighttime vocabulary at 2 in the morning, the specific creaks and contractions of old wood, the hum of the refrigerator cycling, the faint tick of the grandfather clock that I can hear from every room on the ground floor if I know how to listen. I shuffle from the bedroom to the hallway in the particular gait I've been developing, slightly heavy-footed, slightly uncertain, the gait of a woman navigating a landscape that has become mildly unreliable. I've been practicing it in the mirror for 3 days. It's convincing. I know it's convincing because Brian watched me cross the kitchen this afternoon and didn't stop reading his tablet. The pantry is at the back of the kitchen, past the island, behind a door that swings inward. I open it slowly, the way a confused woman opens things, without purpose, exploring rather than seeking. I stand for a moment looking at the shelves, my head slightly tilted, performing the mental drift. Then my hand moves. Past the pasta canisters. Past the oats. Behind the extra olive oil and the vinegar and the 3 boxes of black tea I keep because the brand is discontinued and I bought 12 boxes the last time I found it. My fingers close around the flour jar, oversized, glass, the kind with a rubber gasket lid, and I set it on the shelf below and work the lid with practiced efficiency. The flour is real. I bought it myself, before the lockdown started, and I packed the contraband carefully, in a sealed plastic bag to keep it clean and dry, a button camera, 7 centimeters in diameter, with a clip mount. A 128 gigabytes micro SD card wrapped in a second bag. A USB cable coiled tight. I bought them 4 months ago, on a morning when I was still driving myself to the pharmacy and Brian's helpfulness was still limited to occasional dinners and loading the dishwasher. Professional instinct. 30 years of it, still operational, still sending signals even when everything else felt uncertain. I replace the lid. I put the jar back. I shuffle back to the bedroom. Under the covers, in the dark, I hold the button camera and the card against my chest and I think, they have forgotten what I am. They have looked at the tremor and seen the whole woman. That is the single most expensive mistake you can make. I give it 45 minutes. Brian does his circuit at irregular intervals but with an underlying regularity he doesn't seem aware of, roughly every 15 minutes, he checks the hallway, the kitchen, and the front door. It's the circuit of a man who's watched too many procedurals and believes surveillance is about physical presence rather than attention. At 2:45, I clip the button camera to the underside of my cardigan hem. The hem hangs at mid-thigh, and the angle from there captures everything above knee height in a room, and I ease the bedroom door open 3 inches. The den is at the end of the hall. Brian's laptop light fills the doorframe with a cold, blue-white rectangle. I don't enter. I stand at the edge of the dark, my body against the wall, my breathing slowed to the rhythm I learned in my 40s when I was conducting covert interviews in rooms that didn't know they were being interviewed. His voice is low and comfortable, the voice of a man who believes he is alone. The Porsche alone covers the debt to the contractors. A pause. Yeah. Once the doctor signs off tomorrow, we move the old girl to the memory care wing in Seattle. List the estate by Friday. Another pause, and then a short, dismissive sound. She's completely out of it. You should see her. Just sits there staring at the walls. I hold my breathing level. The camera records his face in the laptop glow, the particular smug softness of a man who has never, not once in his life, been genuinely caught. Friday, I think. They're moving on Friday. I ease back down the hall. I am a shadow. I have spent 3 decades being a shadow in rooms that didn't know I was there. I am very good at it. Back at my vanity, under the low warm light of the mirror, I open the center drawer and take out my husband's fountain pen. Leonard gave it to me on our 25th anniversary, a Mont Blanc Meisterstuck, black resin with a gold nib, the kind of pen that writes the way a very good sentence reads, inevitably, cleanly, without effort. I have not been able to use it properly for 8 months. The tremor sees to that. Tonight I use the tremor. I uncap the pen and I hold my hand loose, not fighting the shaking, not gripping through it, but releasing into it, letting the Parkinsons conduct the motion. The signature that appears on the paper is a frantic, cascading scrawl, barely legible, every letter buckling into the next like a line of people being pushed from behind. It looks like distress. It looks like a signature made under duress, by a hand that was shaking not with illness but with fear. I spend an hour at it. I practice until I can reproduce the distorted mark consistently, until I can make it look the same way twice, which paradoxically means making it look different from itself, the specific incoherence of a forced signature, the kind I have seen on 400 fraudulent insurance claims and could identify in a lineup. If they force me to sign the final transfer documents, the deed, the account consolidation, whatever endgame they have prepared for Friday, I will leave that mark. Any forensic document examiner worth their certification would flag it within an hour. It is a cry for help disguised as compliance. It is evidence disguised as defeat. I am learning to speak the language of my own impairment. I look at myself in the mirror for a long moment when I've finished. Silver hair, slightly disheveled from the night's exertions. Eyes wide, carrying a quality of alarmed intensity that could easily be mistaken for the vacant brightness of cognitive confusion. I look, if I'm being clinical about it, exactly like what they want me to be. Good. I make a decision with the clean, final quality of a closing argument. The investigator is going undercover. No more sharp retorts. No more displays of competence. No more reaching for the correct drawer on the first try. No more remembering dates and names and the exact price of things. No more letting them see the machinery working behind the eyes. I will be Edith who forgets. Edith who stares. Edith who shuffles to the pantry for a midnight snack and forgets why she came. I will give them the performance they've been building towards since they moved in 3 weeks ago, and I will let them grow comfortable inside it, and arrogance will do what arrogance always does in my experience. It will make them careless. It will make them loud. It will make them believe they've already won. And I will be listening. I have spent 30 years watching overconfident people make the mistake of believing that someone they have underestimated was actually underestimated. I have watched them walk into their own evidence with their hands in their pockets and their smiles already assembled. I have watched the moment they understood what they had overlooked. I have always found that moment instructive. I check my longins against the clock on the wall, 3:15. The mechanical heartbeat on my wrist, gold case, white dial, the watch Leonard gave me the year I made senior investigator, the watch I have worn every day for 22 years, is the single most reliable object in this house right now. Everything else has been compromised, repositioned, replaced, or surveilled. The watch simply keeps time, which is the most honest thing anything can do. Brian's circuit puts him in the hallway in approximately 4 minutes. I close my eyes. Not to sleep, I won't sleep tonight, there's too much architecture to complete, too many variables to position, but to run the board. The doctor's appointment is at 9. It is the fulcrum of their entire plan. Pass it, or rather, fail it, in the way they've arranged, and the power of attorney activates, and by the time any outside authority becomes interested in my situation, I will already be in Seattle, behind the locked doors of Meridian Gardens, reclassified as a patient rather than a person. That is what they think they're walking me into tomorrow morning. What they are actually walking into is an audit. I've been audited. I know what it feels like from both sides of the desk. The audited party always believes they've hidden everything. The auditor always finds the one thing they forgot to account for. I have spent 30 years being the auditor. I have never once lost a case. The grandfather clock marks the quarter hour in the hallway. I sink my breathing to the second hand of the longins and I let the cold calm settle through me like good coffee, like the smell of old paper, like the specific satisfaction of an evidence chain that is, link by link, closing into something unbreakable. Tomorrow. The doctor's office. Their move. Then mine. I stand at the open drawer for 2 full minutes. The silk blouses are folded the way I have always folded them, sleeve over sleeve, collar aligned, stacked by color from ivory to charcoal, a small ordered world that has remained constant through 30 years of this house's life. I run my fingers along the edge of the cream one. 100% silk, purchased in San Francisco the year Leonard and I drove the coast for our anniversary. I have worn it precisely 6 times and dry cleaned it after every wearing. I pick it up. I hold my coffee mug over it. The dark stain blooms across the chest in a jagged, spreading shape, the way wounds spread, the way damage spreads, quickly, and with a completeness that cannot be undone. The silk darkens. The smell of coffee fills the air between us, me, and this ruined thing. It feels like a small death. I put it on anyway. 1 navy sock, 1 black. My hair brushed on the right side only, the left side still showing the pillow's impression. When I check the mirror, the woman looking back at me is someone I don't recognize, and that is precisely the point. Vanity, I remind myself, is a luxury. I am not currently in the business of luxuries. Sarah comes in without knocking, she has stopped knocking, which is itself a data point, a behavioral shift I logged 10 days ago when it first happened, and I watch her eyes travel from my hair to my mismatched feet to the coffee-stained blouse, and I watch the thing that moves across her face. Not concern. I want to be precise about this, because precision is what I owe to the record. It is not concern. It is satisfaction. The specific, illuminated satisfaction of someone who has been assembling a narrative for months and has just found the confirming exhibit. Look at you. This is exactly what I've been saying. Oh, Mom. Her voice does the thing, the softening, the slight elevation in pitch that signals performed tenderness. Look at you. Let's get you cleaned up before Dr. Aristhorpe. She reaches for my blouse. I let her. I let her see whatever she needs to see. I am not her mother today. I am her evidence. Brian's hand closes on my elbow with the grip of a man who doesn't bother calculating how much force is appropriate, who has never had to learn that lesson because no one has ever required him to learn it. His fingers find the bone and stay there as he walks me down the front steps to the driveway, his stride slightly too fast for the shuffle I'm performing, so that I have to work to appear to be keeping up while appearing to struggle. I let my toes drag slightly on the gravel. Scrape. Scrape. The sound of a diminished woman. The SUV door opens and I am helped in the way objects are helped into vehicles, efficiently, without the particular attention one gives a person, without checking my face to see how I'm managing. The door closes. Brian walks around to the driver's side. I turn my head toward the house with the slow, vague motion of a woman watching nothing in particular. Sarah is in my window. My study window. Third window from the left on the second floor, the one with the eastern exposure that fills with morning light until 10 and that I have looked out of, at various points in my life, while thinking about cases that wouldn't resolve and bills that needed paying and my husband's face in the morning when he thought I was still asleep. She is pulling books from the shelves. Not reading them, not even opening them, from what I can see. Removing them and setting them aside in what appears to be a systematic search pattern. She's looking for something. The deed, most likely. Or the jewelry box, the rosewood one from the top shelf of my closet that contains my mother's pearls and the diamond earrings Leonard gave me the year I made senior investigator and approximately $8,000 in cash that I keep because I was raised by a woman who survived the Depression and some lessons go bone deep. The violation moves through me with a temperature. Cold. Very specifically cold, the cold of something that should be warm and isn't, the cold of a room that used to be lived in. I find a spot of dried mud on the dashboard and I look at it. I hold it with my eyes. I let it be the entire world, because if I allow my face to show what my chest is currently doing, I will lose everything I spent last night building. The house is already theirs in their minds. Good. Let them furnish the fantasy. It will make the repossession more instructive. The office smells of recirculated air and money, the specific money smell of practices that charge for their willingness to be flexible, a blend of expensive leather upholstery and ozone from medical equipment, and underneath it all, faint but persistent, the synthetic freshness of a room that has been recently and thoroughly cleaned of evidence of previous occupants. Dr. Aristhorpe does not look me in the eye. This is the first thing I note, and I note it with the dispassion of a woman who has interviewed several hundred people who couldn't meet her eyes. He looks at his clipboard, at the wall behind my left shoulder, at Brian, with a familiarity that tells me they have spoken more than once in a non-clinical context, and at the space slightly above my head. He does not look at me. Now, Edith, he says, Edith, not Mrs. Parker, the immediate deployment of a first name being a power move so standard I'd be more unsettled if he'd skipped it. Can you tell me what year it is? I let my eyes travel to the clock on the wall, the slow, slightly effortful travel of someone for whom reading a clock requires a conscious reorientation. Then back to him. I let my steel blue eyes soften at the edges, lose their focal depth. It's a technique, I learned it watching recorded depositions, watching how people's eyes behave when they're genuinely lost versus genuinely found, and the difference is mostly in the periphery. I know exactly what this is. The SMSE. I administered a version of it once, on a case, a claimant who was faking cognitive decline to support a disability fraud, which is the inverse of my current situation but requires familiarity with the same instrument. Orientation. Recall. Calculation. The gatekeeper, as Brian has certainly been told, and the gatekeeping has already been decided. I can see the box in his mind. Pre-checked. Cognitive impairment. He came with a destination, he's just performing the itinerary. It's 1998? I let it come out as a question wearing a statement's clothes, the particular uncertain rising inflection of someone grasping at something that has already moved. I watch his pen move and I keep my face soft, on the edge of apologetic distress. When he asks me to subtract 7 from 100, I use my fingers. I make a show of the calculation, index, middle, ring, pinky, thumb, lips moving, and arrive at 93 with an expression of someone who has climbed a small mountain and is not sure the view was worth it. Then I stop. I look at my hands. I look at him. The numbers, I say, and let my voice catch slightly. They're jumping, doctor. I can't, they keep moving. His pen moves again. Internally, I am running a completely different calculation, $400,000, which is the figure I found in a letter from the IRS addressed to Brian Calloway that arrived at my house 6 weeks ago and that I photographed with my iPhone before replacing it in the envelope with the practiced hands of someone who has been handling other people's correspondence since 1991. $400,000 in back taxes, penalties, and deferred interest. The IRS does not send that letter until they have already exhausted several prior steps. Brian is not in debt, Brian is drowning. And I need approximately 3 minutes alone with his tablet. I count on my fingers again, this time getting the wrong answer on purpose. Thorpe writes it down with the quiet satisfaction of a man confirming something he has already decided. The phone rings in his coat pocket, a generic ringtone, the default setting of a man who doesn't personalize things, and he looks at it, looks at me, and makes the calculation that I am not going anywhere. He is correct that I am not going anywhere. He is incorrect about everything else. One moment, he says, the practiced apology, and he steps out. The door clicks. My tremor stops. I am out of the chair before the echo of the latch has finished, my movements fluid and precise and entirely unlike anything I've permitted them to see for the past 3 weeks. I am at the desk in 4 steps. The tablet is face up, screen still live, and I lean over it with the forward tilt that positions my cardigan hem, and the button camera clipped to it, directly above the screen. He hasn't completed the examination. The appointment is 20 minutes in. The exam is not finished. But the summary of findings is already drafted. I read it fast, the way I read everything, front, back, operative clause, signature line. Nonlinear. Profoundly disoriented. Incapable of independent self-care. Poses risk to herself and others in unsupervised residential setting. The recommendation is for immediate guardianship proceedings and transfer to a facility called the Willows Memory Care. Not Meridian Gardens. The Willows. They've changed the destination since Brian's phone call 3 nights ago, which means they've been actively moving pieces as recently as yesterday. My heart is a drum behind my sternum. I breathe through it. I bring the camera into alignment with the header, the body, the predated signature at the bottom, and I hold my breath and I scroll, steady hand, steady lens, recording it all. The date. His signature. The referral code. I have the how. I have the who. The tablet goes back to its exact position. I am in the chair, hands folded, eyes soft, by the time the handle turns. The ride home has a particular quality of quiet, the quiet of 2 people who believe they have just won something. Brian drives with one wrist over the wheel, his body language expansive, taking up space the way triumphant men take up space. I watch the road through the passenger window and perform the slight abstraction of a woman for whom the landscape is slightly more than she can parse. Back at the estate, I am helped from the car and walked to the stairs and told to rest, and I rest. I lie on my bed in the dark with my ear pressed to the floor vent, which channels sound from the dining room below with the efficiency of an acoustic design that was never intended for surveillance but works beautifully for it. The smell of lemongrass and basil drifts up. Thai food, Brian's preference. My grandmother's china, probably. His voice is comfortable and clear. The voice of a man eating well. Doc's report hits the portal tomorrow morning. The clink of fork on plate. Once we have that, the notary won't ask questions. The notary. The final piece. I run the architecture of it as I lie in the dark. They need me to sign the deed transfer before the guardianship is officially filed, because once the court is involved, every transaction requires oversight. There is a narrow window, 24 to 48 hours, where I am legally sane enough to sign my own assets away but apparently demented enough that no one will look too closely at what I'm signing or how. It's a classic fraud structure. I've seen it in insurance context a dozen times: exploit the gap between diagnosis and declaration, execute the transfer in the gap, then file the paperwork that closes the window behind you. Thread the needle. Collect the estate. I breathe. I listen. I note. I wait until their voices descend into the comfortable mumble of people winding down a celebratory evening, and then I reach under the pillow for the jitterbug. It has no browser. No apps. 3 contacts and a keypad. It has a keypad. I dial from memory, not a phone number but an access sequence, 14 digits, a code I set up 4 years ago when I had a smart home system installed and which I have never written down anywhere because the only documents I fully trust are the ones that exist only inside my own skull. The home security hub picks up on the second ring with its automated greeting, and I navigate by keypad, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, through a menu architecture that I designed myself and that I haven't touched since the installation. Settings. Security. Guest access. I can see the whole house from here, not visually, but architecturally, every smart lock, every connected thermostat, every access point. Sarah's phone has guest-level permissions. Brian's has the same. Both were granted by me, 3 weeks ago, in what I was performing as a gesture of accommodation. I revoke them both. Systematically. Lock by lock. Then I change the master code to Leonard's birthday, June 4, 1948, 060414948, and I disable the remote override, which means their phones will no longer function as keys to this house. They don't know this yet. The gilded cage, which they believe they'd inherited, is now mine to lock. I dial a second number. My investment firm's automated line, the one that has operated unchanged for 11 years and whose menu architecture I know the way I know my own handwriting. I enter my PIN. Deliberately wrong. I'm sorry, that PIN is incorrect. Please try again. I try again. Wrong again, specifically wrong in a different way, different digits, same incorrectness. I'm sorry. A third time. For your protection, this account has been temporarily locked. Please visit a branch location with 2 forms of photo ID to restore access. I set the phone on my chest and look at the ceiling and allow myself a thin, cold smile. Sarah can have the power of attorney. She can have Aristorp's report and the notary and the carefully threaded needle of their fraud window. She will find that the investment accounts are locked and require in-person verification with documents she doesn't have access to. She will find the operating capital of my retirement, approximately $2.3 million in managed funds, as accessible to her as a locked room for which she has just been told she needs a key that is kept at a location she cannot reach by Friday. I have just cut the fuel line. Let the engine sputter. At midnight, I shuffle to the kitchen. The performance is in full execution now, the slight heaviness of foot, the slightly tilted gait, the eyes that are present without being focused, like a room with the lights on and nobody home. I open the pantry. I look at the shelves with the expression of a woman who has arrived somewhere and cannot reconstruct why. Sarah is there. She startles, the wine glass in her hand jumps, the red interior tilting toward the rim, and then recovers, composing the concerned daughter expression with the speed of someone who practices it. Mom? What are you doing up? I look through her. I let my eyes do the thing, the slight, unfocused shimmer that I've learned to produce by defocusing my gaze slightly past a person's face, toward the middle distance directly behind them. It reads, I know from the mirror, as someone seeing something that isn't there. Arthur, I say. My voice is soft and slightly lost, the voice of a woman in another decade. He hasn't come home from the office, Sarah. I was going to make his tea. The silence that follows has weight. I watch her face, carefully, from behind the performance. There it is, the thing I was looking for, the thing I wasn't certain I'd find, the thing that tells me she is still, somewhere behind the greed and the desperation and the months of cultivated cruelty, a person who was once a child who loved her father. Guilt. Sharp, ugly, sudden as a cut. Her face crumbles at the edges for exactly 3 seconds. She reaches toward me. Her hand extends. Then it pulls back. I watch the hardening, the resolidification of purpose over feeling, the cooling of something that briefly ran liquid. Her jaw resettles. Her eyes clear into something flatter and more decided. "Dad's gone, Mom," she says. "Go back to bed." She's chosen. She had a door and she let it close. I shuffle toward the hallway, and I don't let her see my face. The basement stairs are old pine, slightly uneven, and I navigate them slowly with one hand on the painted iron railing, the other hand in my cardigan pocket, closed around Leonard's fountain pen. I told myself I was searching for Arthur. I've been telling myself that all the way down the stairs, performing it internally as well as externally, staying in character even for my own nervous system. Good undercover work requires that. You don't just wear the mask, you let the mask be the first layer, and you keep yourself in the layer beneath. The furnace room is at the back, concrete floor, single bare bulb, the smell of old metal and dust and the particular enclosed mustiness of a space that doesn't get opened frequently. The furnace itself is a solid, 30-year-old unit that has never given me trouble. The floor around it is where Sarah has been building her fire hazard. Newspaper, stacked in loose bales. Rags that I don't recognize, not mine, brought in, showing oil stains that are too dark and too extensive to be accidental. Pushed close to the furnace housing with the careless precision of someone staging a scene rather than creating one through genuine negligence. I stand over it in the dim light and think about what I am willing to do. I am not willing to burn my house. 34 years of marriage happened in these walls. Leonard's handwriting is still on the inside cover of half the books on the study shelves. I am not going to set fire to that. But a fire hazard, properly reported, brings the fire department, which brings a mandatory inspection, which generates an official record. And an official record, created in the next 24 hours, becomes a documented concern about the conditions of my care, documented by people who are not Sarah, not Brian, not Eris Thorpe, and not a notary who has been described, in my daughter's own words, as discreet. Marcus the notary arrives at 2 o'clock tomorrow. At 1:55, this house will have a problem that requires a phone call. I close my fingers around the pen. The cold metal presses into my palm with the specific assurance of a thing that is exactly what it is, a pen, a tool, an instrument of precision in the hands of someone who knows how to use it. The audit, I decide, begins at noon. My move. The Douglas firs outside my bedroom window are still black against a sky the color of a bruise when I hear him. Brian's tread is distinctive, the particular flat-footed heaviness of a large man who has never learned to move quietly because he has never needed to, because the world has generally arranged itself around his comfort and convenience. I hear him in the kitchen the way you hear weather before it arrives, by the sounds of the house changing around it. The refrigerator opening. The cabinet drawer that sticks slightly and has to be forced. I am at the doorway before he's finished with the refrigerator. He doesn't see me. He has his back to the hallway, and he's moving with the focused efficiency of a man on a specific errand, not making breakfast, not idling, but searching. His hands work along the pantry shelves from left to right, lifting, checking, replacing. He tips a canister of oats, shakes it, sets it back. He works through the pasta and the vinegar and the tea boxes with the particular systematic thoroughness of someone who expects to find something concealed. He thinks I'm hiding gin. Or pills. He's building a picture of dysfunction, a woman self-medicating her decline, a woman whose tremors and foggy episodes have a chemical explanation that isn't chemistry at all. He wants the bottle. He wants the prescription that was never prescribed. He wants the evidence that makes the story complete. His hand passes over the flour jar. My chest stops. He lifts it. Both hands, it's a substantial jar, 3 pounds of flour plus the weight of the glass, and he holds it at chest height and turns it slightly, looking at the outside surface with the expression of a man who is looking for a label he can use rather than what's actually inside. The glass is frosted. The flour inside shows nothing. He grunts. He sets it back on the shelf with a thud that I feel in my back teeth. He is looking for the vices of a weak woman. He has never once considered the possibility that I might be a professional. That the tool of a professional looks nothing like the contraband of someone who is simply trying to cope. He closes the pantry and goes to put the kettle on, and I retreat silently from the doorway and breathe. The floor vent in the bathroom is behind the toilet, a grate that I unscrewed one afternoon 3 weeks ago and have never fully retightened. I kneel on the tile, slowly, carefully. The knees are the first thing to go, and I've known that for 6 years, and ease the grate forward and reach into the hollow space between the subfloor and the first floor ceiling. The jitterbug is there. And my phone has a notification. Unauthorized lock override attempt, 6:43 a.m. Then a second, Wi-Fi router reset attempt, 6:51 a.m. Failed. I sit on the cold bathroom floor and work through the implications with the systematic pleasure of a clean evidence chain. Sarah woke up this morning and discovered her phone could no longer operate the front door lock, and her first move was a locksmith, which tells me she called someone who came to the property before 7 in the morning, which tells me she is beyond improvising and into panicking. Her second move was to attempt a router reset, which would theoretically knock my smart hub offline and allow her to reconfigure access from scratch. She doesn't know about the furnace circuit. 4 years ago, when the system was installed, I had the hub hardwired to the emergency circuit, the circuit that stays live even during a power interruption, the one connected to the furnace and the sump pump, because those are the systems that cannot go offline. The installer had thought I was being overcautious. I had thought, I am a retired fraud investigator and I know exactly how many times contingency plans have been the difference between a solved case and an unsolved one. To cut my access, Sarah would have to cut power to the entire house. She would have to know to do that. She doesn't know to do that. The notary arrives at 2. I have 6 hours. I am in the wingback chair performing my morning vacancy, hands folded, eyes softly aimed at nothing, the particular quality of stillness that communicates a woman in whom the lights are on but dimming, when I catch Sarah in the den through the angled reflection of the hallway mirror, a geometry of sight lines that she has never thought to consider. She is at Leonard's desk. She has his fountain pen, not mine, not the Mont Blanc, but his everyday pen, the Waterman he kept in the desk drawer for correspondence, because Leonard believed that certain communications deserved the gravity of a proper pen. She has a sheet of my personal stationery, with the engraved header I had made when I joined the Historical Society's board 7 years ago. And she is writing. Her hand moves with concentration. She is practicing something. I can see the slight hesitation and restart, the repositioning of the grip, the behavior of someone copying rather than composing. She lifts the pen, tilts the paper, compares what she's written to something I can't see from this angle. She mutters it to the empty room, the words arriving through the hallway quiet with a clarity that turns the air around me cold. For your own good, Mom. Not to me. To herself. To the empty room. The phrase of someone who has learned that justification is a thing you say in your own head until it becomes true. She is writing a resignation letter from the Historical Society on my stationery in a simulation of my handwriting, and she is telling the empty room that this is for my benefit. She is not taking my money and my house and my freedom. She is taking me out of the world while I am still in it. Severing the last threads of a life from the people who knew it, the women who have sat across from me at the monthly meeting for 7 years, who would notice an absence, who might call to check in, who might call a number that is no longer my number and leave a message that is no longer checked by me. She is making sure there is no one left who would wonder. The cold in my chest is different from rage. It is the cold of a woman who has just understood the full scope of what is being taken. Not a piece. Not an account. The whole shape of an existence. I smooth my hands on my knees. I breathe through it. I file it. The silver Lexus turns into the driveway at 1:45, 15 minutes early, which tells me Marcus is eager rather than professional. A professional notary operates exactly on time. Early arrival signals personal investment in the outcome. He is a compact man in his mid-50s, the build and posture of someone who has spent decades in professional contexts and has mistaken the packaging for the substance. His tie is Italian, his briefcase is calfskin, and he adjusts the tie before he's fully out of the car, which is the gesture of a man who uses his appearance as the primary argument for his credibility. Brian meets him at the door. I am in the hallway, in my chair, visible from the entrance but at a distance that implies I am a piece of furniture rather than a party to the transaction. I watch the two of them greet each other, not the formal, slightly cautious greeting of a notary meeting a client's family for the first time, but the loose, economic nod of men who have already had the important conversation and are now executing the agreed-upon plan. Brian's hand on Marcus's shoulder. The slight incline of both heads toward a private word I'm too far to hear. No, how are you, Mrs. Parker? No glance in my direction. No professional acknowledgement of the principal party in any of these documents. I am, in their choreography, already a signature waiting to be obtained. Not a person. Not a principal. A formality. Marcus sets his briefcase on the dining room table and opens it with the particular click of a man who enjoys his props. He smells, from across the room, of peppermint, the mint of a man who chews gum in the car to settle his own nerves. Let him be nervous. Nervous men make mistakes. Nervous men rush. I shuffle to the basement door and tell the room, vaguely, that I heard a noise. Brian looks up from his briefing with Marcus, his expression briefly irritated, the expression of a man managing a variable, and then dismisses it. The shuffle and the vague announcement and the general atmosphere of confusion I've been projecting for 3 weeks have done their work. I am the background noise. I am the thing that occasionally wanders and is occasionally redirected. He doesn't follow me. I go down the stairs. The basement is dim, the single bulb casting its familiar circle over the furnace room. I move quickly, because quickly is what the moment requires, and I have been waiting for this precise configuration of factors for 12 hours. The magnifying glass is from my desk, an oversized Victorian-style glass with a brass handle that I've had since the 90s, when I used it to examine fine print on handwritten claim documents before everything went digital. I know what a magnifying glass does to focus sunlight. I know it from physics, and I know it from a case in 2003 involving an insurance claim for a rural fire that the claimant said was spontaneous combustion and that I was able to demonstrate was a lens-based ignition using a broken greenhouse pane. I understand the mechanism. I understand the timing, which is approximately 8 to 12 minutes depending on the focal intensity and the moisture content of the target material. I position the glass on a stack of Sarah's newspapers, the ones she brought down and arranged so helpfully near the furnace housing, and I angle it until the sliver of afternoon sun coming through the cellar's east window lands in a concentrated point on the top sheet. I am not starting a fire. I am starting a smoke signal. I check the angle twice. I check my watch. 1:53. I go upstairs. The dining room table has become a legal execution platform dressed in good wood and afternoon light. Marcus has spread the documents with the practiced ease of a man who has done this many times. Deed transfer on the left, associated filings to the right, signature flags in yellow, initials flags in blue, the whole arrangement suggesting a routine transaction, a normal afternoon, a thing that is done every day. The language at the top of the deed transfer reads SNB Holdings. The consideration for the Parker estate, house, land, the 2 acres of Douglas fir, the study full of books, the sideboard where the Ming vase used to stand, is listed as $10. $10. I let that number sit in my mind for exactly the second it takes to fix it permanently, to make it part of the record in the place where I keep things that matter. Brian takes up his position behind my chair. Not beside me, behind me, hands resting on the chair back, the configuration of a man who wants a secondary party to feel the physical presence of consequence. His hands are not touching me, but I feel the heat of them through the wood, the suggestion of a grip. Sarah is at the window. She is chewing her lower lip, not nerves about what they're doing, I've observed her long enough to know, but impatience. The impatience of a woman who has been waiting for this moment for months and wants it finished so she can start spending. Marcus holds out his pen. Just a few spots to initial, Edith, he says, with the smoothed, pleasantly efficient tone of someone who has processed 24 of these in his career. Nothing complicated. We'll be done in 10 minutes. I look at the documents. I look at his pen. I take it. The pen in my hand is a ballpoint, corporate, unremarkable, disposable. I look at the first signature line. Marcus's eyes are on the paper. Brian's weight is behind me. Sarah's reflection is in the window. I let my hand go. I don't fight the tremor and I don't guide through it. I release into it completely, the way a swimmer releases into a current, and I let the nib find its own path across the line. The result is not a signature. It is a landscape, peaks and valleys and sudden veering directions, an illegible cascade of connected marks that could be interpreted, by someone who wanted to interpret it generously, as the deteriorated handwriting of a sick woman. But I am not signing Edith Parker. Inside the cascade, inside the apparent neurological chaos, I am writing 4 letters. Small, precisely placed within the larger disorder, occupying the baseline of the scrawl where a trained, specifically, a forensic document examiner's trained, would know to look, HLP. Not visible in a glance. Visible under magnification, under the examination that follows evidence collection. Marcus looks at the mark for 3 seconds. His pen hand makes a small adjustment, a notary calculating how much flexibility his fee has purchased. It's close enough, he mutters, and reaches for the next page. He doesn't know what he has witnessed. He has witnessed a signature, yes. He has witnessed a crime scene that has been signed, sealed, and is now waiting for the examiner. The first alarm hits at exactly the right moment. Beep. 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 The basement smoke detector, hardwired to the main panel, non-silenceable without the hub code, engages at 85 decibels, and 6 seconds later the kitchen detector joins it, because smoke travels and the house is connected and the system is doing exactly what a safety system should do. The smell arrives a beat behind, scorched paper, the particular dry char of old newspaper, nothing that has caught yet but something that is moving toward catching, which is the relevant distinction. Brian spins around. What the hell? He is looking at me with the expression of a man recalculating. What did you do, Edith? I drop the pen. I pull my hands to my chest, fingers splayed, and I widen my eyes in the expression of a woman who is frightened and slightly lost in the frightening. My lower lip finds its tremble. The furnace, I say, my voice thin and wavering. Arthur always said the furnace was temperamental. He always said it needed watching. Arthur, I let the name dissolve into a soft, confused worry, the name of a dead man summoned as a shield. Brian is already moving. Marcus has half risen from his chair. The documents are on the table. And I am right next to the table. I stumble. It is a masterful stumble, the stumble of a woman startled by the alarm, by the chaos, by the apparition of her dead husband in her own frantic mind, a stumble that is simultaneously completely accidental and completely intentional, the stumble that I have been waiting for this precise configuration of chaos to make possible. My arm sweeps across the table. The documents go first, a cascade of papers, signature pages, and deed copies and associated filings, a paper waterfall landing half on the floor and half over the chair. In the same motion, my elbow finds Marcus's open bottle of permanent ink, the one he set out for the initialing process, because some notaries of the old school still use a stamp pad and a seal, and Marcus is exactly that kind of notary. The bottle goes over. A thick, black tide moves across the table with the unstoppable deliberateness of something that cannot be recalled, spreading over the deed, over the signature lines, over Marcus's calfskin briefcase where it's sitting open at the table's edge, a spreading irreversible darkness that turns the legal transfer of the Parker estate into something that looks, precisely, like a Rorschach test. Marcus makes a sound. Not a word. The sound a man makes when he sees something valuable being destroyed and the destruction is already complete before he's processed that it has begun. The documents, Sarah's voice from the window, the particular register of someone who has been waiting months for something and is watching it dissolve. They're ruined. I stand among the ruin with my hands at my chest and my eyes wide and my expression the picture of a woman who has done something she doesn't understand. Shut that thing off. Brian is yelling at no one in particular, which is the behavior of a man who has just discovered that the systems around him are not obeying the commands he's issuing. Sarah has her phone out. She's navigating, stabbing at the screen, pulling up the smart home app with the urgency of someone who has used it before and expects it to respond. It is not responding. Because the app requires the hub access that was revoked last night at 2 a.m. by the same hands that are currently pressed to my chest in theatrical distress. The 2-minute window for alarm deactivation expires. The smart hub, operating exactly as designed and as I designed it, sends its automated emergency event notification to the local precinct: possible fire, wellness check requested, property address logged. The wail starts in the distance. The particular rising frequency of a siren, still blocks away, moving through the Tuesday afternoon quiet of the neighborhood with the inescapability of something that has been officially initiated. Brian's head comes around. His eyes find mine. For the first time in 3 weeks, he is looking at me. Not at an obstacle. Not at a variable. Not at a liquid asset. He is looking at me with the specific, recalibrating expression of a man who has just encountered information that does not fit his model. The mask, I observe clinically, is slipping. Good. The door opens before Brian can compose a response to the siren. Officer Miller is not a large man, but he has the compressed authority of someone who has been doing this job long enough that authority has become structural rather than performed. He stands in the doorway with his hand at his holster, not drawn, positioned, and he squints through the thin haze of smoke that has drifted up from the basement and is now occupying the hallway with the light, acrid presence of a situation that has been declared. He is 38 years old. I know this because I have been living in this neighborhood for 34 years and I knew his parents and attended his high school graduation as a neighbor and have waved to him from the front porch since he started patrolling this area 6 years ago. Brian pivots with the speed and completeness of a man who has had occasion before to switch rapidly between modes. The predatory enforcer becomes the concerned son-in-law between one breath and the next, his face restructuring, his shoulders dropping into something less aggressive, his voice finding the register of a citizen in distress seeking assistance. Officer, thank God. He moves toward Miller, away from me, opening space between himself and the table of ink-ruined documents. My mother-in-law had a little accident with the stove. She's a bit confused today. It's the condition. She gets very. His hand closes on my bicep. His fingers find the bone. The grip is not the grip of a concerned son-in-law steadying a confused elderly woman. The grip is the grip of 3 weeks of physical intimidation distilled into a single, final, silent command: stay quiet. Play the part. I feel it. I feel every pound of pressure in it, the particular message it is sending, the assumption that I will receive that message and obey it because I have been receiving that message for 3 weeks and obeying it, because I have been the shuffling Edith, the vacant Edith, the Edith who looks through people and mumbles about her dead husband's tea. I pull my arm free. Not roughly, cleanly. With the wiry, deliberate strength of a woman who is done being a prop in someone else's performance. I stand up straight. 30 years of professional posture reasserts itself through the spine like a current switching on. My shoulders settle. My chin levels. My eyes, which have been performing soft focus vacancy for 3 weeks, sharpen into the cold, precise, analytical gaze that I turned on insurance fraudsters from Portland to Seattle for the better part of my career, the gaze that my colleagues called the audit look, and that my husband said reminded him of a hawk that had already decided. Officer Miller. My voice drops the wandering, uncertain lilt. It drops the slight hesitation I've been cultivating. It arrives in the room at the cadence I spent 30 years perfecting, the cadence of a woman who has walked into rooms full of people who did not want to hear what she had to say and said it anyway, clearly, without apology, with the complete authority of someone who has the facts and knows she has the facts. His hand leaves his holster. His eyes shift from Brian to me with the instinctive reorientation of someone who has just located the actually relevant party in a room. "I am Edith Parker," I say. "Retired senior investigator, badge 7742. The people in this room are currently committing elder abuse and third-degree forgery, and they have been doing so for approximately 3 weeks." I reach into my cardigan. The microSD card is there, where it has been since 2 o'clock this morning, the 128 gigabytes of audio and video that I have been building since the night I found the flower jar's contents undisturbed and began recording in earnest. Brian at his laptop, the voice on the phone, the cold arithmetic of my disappearance. Aristorp's pre-completed evaluation. The staged fire hazard. The ink ruin deed. I hold it out toward Officer Miller on the flat of my palm, the way you offer something that is both evidence and argument. "The evidence is right here," I say. "Secure the room." The shuffling Edith is gone. She was never really here. She was a case strategy, a performance, a professional's most carefully executed undercover role. The investigator has come home. The police radios fill my living room with their particular language, the crackle and code of official process, the sound of a situation being formally recognized by the people whose recognition makes it real. Officer Miller has his notepad out. A second officer, younger, has positioned himself near the hallway in the practiced way of someone managing a perimeter. Brian is standing by the fireplace, and he is vibrating. I recognize the energy. I have seen it in interview rooms, the specific, coiled tension of a cornered person who hasn't yet decided whether to fight or collapse, who is still calculating whether there is an exit that hasn't been closed. His jaw is working. His eyes are moving between me and Miller and the ink-stained documents on the table with the rapid, involuntary quality of someone whose contingency plans are dissolving in sequence. I turn to Officer Miller and I give him the room. Not the room as it currently appears, the smoke-hazed chaos of an afternoon that has come spectacularly apart, but the room as a crime scene, which is what it is, which is what it has been since the first afternoon Brian carried boxes through the front door and I started cataloging the evidence. The ink-stained document on the table is a fraudulent deed transfer, I say. My voice is steady. The adrenaline is there, I can feel it, the specific electric quality of an operation reaching its conclusion, the investigator's high that I remember from my best cases, but adrenaline, in my experience, is fuel, not interference, provided you've spent 30 years learning to drive on it. It was prepared to transfer the Parker estate and all associated land to an entity called SNB Holdings for a stated consideration of $10. Miller is writing. The man in the Lexus is Marcus Thorne. I turn slightly, ensuring the button camera's remaining memory is recording. He is, to my knowledge, an uncommissioned notary. His certification lapsed 18 months ago. I believe you'll find that in the state registry. I let that sit for a moment. Then, and that man. I point to Brian, a clean, direct gesture, nothing theatrical, the gesture of a woman who has made this kind of identification before. Has been physically restricting my movements for 72 hours. He blocked my access to my study. He removed my vehicle keys. He confiscated my phone. I have documentation of each incident. Brian makes a sound. Not words yet, a sound of protest, the sound that comes before the story is assembled. I am no longer the shuffling woman in the stained blouse. I am the lead witness in a felony in progress, and I know exactly how to be that. She's lying. Sarah's voice arrives at a frequency I've never heard from her before, not the performative distress of the concerned daughter, not the sweetened impatience of a woman managing an obstacle, but something raw and stripped and ugly, the voice underneath all the voices, the one that's been there the whole time. She's having a breakdown. This is exactly what we've been dealing with. This is the confusion. She doesn't know what she's saying. She has her phone out. Her thumb is moving with the frantic purpose of someone who knows exactly what needs to be deleted and is calculating whether she can do it before the room closes around her. I see the motion before she's completed the navigation, the specific thumb movement that precedes a factory reset, muscle memory for a woman who has evidently done this before in a situation requiring evidence management. Officer. I don't raise my voice. Her phone contains the text logs with Marcus Thorne, the locksmith she called this morning at 6:43, and I believe you'll find an encrypted thread with Aristorp's billing contact. She's attempting to delete them. Miller moves with the efficiency of someone who has caught the operative detail on the first pass. His hand closes on Sarah's wrist before her thumb has completed the motion, not roughly, but with the complete finality of a door being closed from the outside. Sarah's face in that moment is not a face I have a name for. Every layer she has assembled over the past 3 weeks, the concerned daughter, the exhausted caregiver, the woman who only wants what's best for mom, separates from the structure beneath it and falls away like a set being struck after the performance has ended. What's underneath is not a daughter. It is not even a person I recognize. It is the raw, ugly, graceless desperation of someone who has been caught, and who has not yet accepted that being caught is the end of something rather than an obstacle to be managed. I look at her for exactly the time it takes to make a clinical determination. She is finished. Then I look away. I lead the detectives to the pantry 40 minutes later, when the crime scene has been formally established and the questions have been thorough enough that I trust the framework is in place. The lead investigator is a woman named Carver, mid-40s, with the particular economy of movement of someone who has been doing this long enough to have stopped performing the job and simply doing it. The flour jar, I say. She lifts it. She opens it with the gloved hands of professional process, and the flour yields the plastic-wrapped package that has been sitting in it for 12 hours, and she extracts the second button camera and the backup microSD card with the careful deliberateness of someone who understands that what they are holding has a legal weight. I watch the air in the room change. There is a specific moment, in any investigation, when the collected evidence achieves a mass that shifts everyone's understanding of what they're looking at. The moment when it stops being an accusation and becomes a record. I have seen it in dozens of rooms over 30 years, and I recognize it here, in the slight stilling of Carver's hands, in the way Miller leans forward, in the quality of silence that descends on the pantry like a change in pressure. They are realizing that this was not a lucky break. That the woman they walked in on, the trembling, coffee-stained, mismatched socks woman in the wingback chair, was not a victim who got fortunate. She was an investigator running a controlled operation from inside a cage. I hand Carver the handwritten log. 43 days of entries in my careful, slightly tremoring hand, unauthorized withdrawals flagged by date and amount, manufactured, foggy episodes, cross-referenced with Sarah's iPhone filming activity, Brian's movement patterns and the alcohol levels I estimated from his breath, Aristorp's name with the date his business card appeared in Brian's jacket pocket. It is a trial-ready case. I built it in the margins of my own captivity, and I am handing it to them on what is, if you'll forgive the precision, a silver platter. The second officer moves to cuff Brian at 17 minutes past 2. Brian's calculation, the one he's been running since I first opened my mouth in front of Miller, the calculation that has been visibly failing to produce an acceptable output, finally produces its terminal result. He lunges. He lunges and shouts about his rights, which is the particular combination of actions that tells you everything about a man's relationship to the concept of rights, that he understands them only as something that protects him and not as something that constrains him, that the word has always meant what I'm owed rather than what everyone is guaranteed. He goes down hard. The hardwood floors that he has been pricing for resale value for 3 weeks receive him with the indifference of polished oak, and the sound he makes is not dignified, and the posture he assumes in the subsequent moments is not the posture of the broad-shouldered, Scotch-drinking, hallway-filling man who planted himself in my path and told me the living room was safer. Sarah is led out through the front door in tears, still composing the martyr narrative, still arranging her face into the expression of a woman who is misunderstood, whose motives were pure and whose execution was just slightly imperfect. The neighbors are on their porches. I can see them from the window, 3 houses, 6 people, standing in the particular still alertness of people witnessing something they will be discussing for months. The perfect family gets loaded into the back of a cruiser on a Tuesday afternoon while the Douglas firs stand around the property and the grandfather clock ticks in the hallway, and I stand at my own window in my coffee-stained blouse and one navy sock and one black and watch it happen. The silence that follows their departure settles into the house like something returning. It is the sweetest sound I've heard in years. 2 hours later, I am in a clinic that smells of nothing except clean air and mild antiseptic, sitting in a chair that is simply a chair rather than a surveillance position, and Dr. Vance is asking me what year it is. She is a sharp-eyed woman of about 50, with the no-nonsense economy of someone who got into medicine to practice medicine and has organized everything else in her professional life accordingly. She looks at me, not at her clipboard. She asks the question without the preloaded conclusion behind it. It's 2024, I say. February. The examination you're conducting is a SMSE. The previous examiner, Gerald Aristhorpe, MD, completed a fraudulent assessment this morning that he had pre-written before I arrived. The predated summary describes me as nonlinear, profoundly disoriented, and incapable of self-care. I have the documentation. I pause. Would you like me to subtract 7 from 100? I can do it without using my fingers. Dr. Vance looks at me for a long moment. Then she makes a sound that is not quite a laugh, something drier and more appreciative than a laugh. She asks her questions. I answer them. The Parkinson's I explain accurately, with the clinical precision of a woman who has been managing her own medical situation for 2 years without the assistance of people who wish to exploit it. The medication schedule I recite from memory. The gaslighting I describe with the detached specificity of an investigator describing a methodology. When she signs the report, fully lucid, competent, and capable of independent decision-making, I hold it in both hands and read it twice and feel the weight of the guardianship threat lift from my chest like something physical being removed. I sent Aristhorpe's pre-completed report to the State Medical Board at 11 o'clock this morning, from the jitterbug, before the notary arrived, using the number I looked up in the state directory 6 weeks ago when I first found his business card. He will not examine another patient under current licensure. I have made sure of that. Elias Hartmann picks up on the second ring, because he has always picked up on the second ring, because Leonard chose his law partner the way he chose everything in his life, with the specific, unhurried care of a man who knew that speed and quality were not the same thing. Elias, I say. I am standing at my study window, looking out at the rain-slicked driveway where the silver Lexus stood this afternoon. The Slayer statute. Edith. His voice is the voice of a man who has been waiting, at some level, for this call. Tell me. They tried to kill my legal personhood for financial gain, I say. I want Sarah removed from the will. Both wills, mine and the secondary trust from Leonard's estate. The insurance policies. The beneficiary designations on the investment accounts, once we get those unlocked. I watch the rain stipple the driveway in expanding circles. Under Washington law, you cannot profit from a person you've abused. I want that applied with precision. I'll have the filings ready by Friday, he says. Thursday, I say. A pause. Then, Thursday. I have spent 40 years watching people try to take things that weren't theirs to take. I have watched them calculate and scheme and construct elaborate architectures of false documentation, and I have watched those architectures come apart under the pressure of a thorough audit, and I have watched the expressions on their faces when the math finally caught up with them. Sarah wanted my assets so badly she was willing to erase the person holding them. She will inherit nothing now but the legal fees for her own defense, and those, I am given to understand, will be considerable. The numbers never lie. People do. And the numbers have a way of resolving themselves eventually, given sufficient patience and precise record-keeping. I find a bottle of solvent in the utility cabinet under the kitchen sink and I bring it to the dining room with a clean rag, and I begin. The ink is permanent, it says so on the bottle that is currently soaking into the evidence bag Carver took with her, but permanent, in my experience, is a word that applies to intent rather than result. With solvent and time and the particular stubborn patience of a woman who has been cleaning her own house for 34 years, the mahogany surface emerges from the black tide by degrees. Not perfect, there will be a shadow, a ghost of this afternoon, a slight darkening in the grain that a careful eye will always be able to find. Good. I want it there. I want the table to remember. Each stroke of the rag is a reclamation of specific real estate. This is my table. These are my floors, which I have walked on for 34 years in bare feet in the summer and slippers in the winter and heels when Leonard and I had people for dinner. This is my house. I remove the nanny cams from the smoke detectors with a flathead screwdriver. They come out easily, these cheap little $68 lenses, and they go into a bowl of salt water on the kitchen counter, and I watch them stop functioning with the dry satisfaction of someone shutting down a surveillance operation they did not authorize. I reclaim my study. I replace the books Sarah pulled from the shelves, in their correct order, the order I have maintained since 1994. I find Leonard's fountain pen on the desk where she left it, having apparently abandoned the forgery project when the afternoon descended into chaos, and I hold it in my right hand and feel the tremor move through both of us, me and the pen, and I set it back in its holder on the right side of the desk blotter, where it has always lived. The house smells of lavender again. And faintly of solvent. And underneath both, the old wood and old paper smell that is the actual smell of this house, the smell I have lived inside for decades. The peach perfume is gone. The scotch is gone. I am the sovereign of these four walls once more, and I stand in the center of my study and I breathe it in. The county jail on a Wednesday morning has a particular quality of fluorescent light that makes everyone look slightly ill. The inmates, the guards, the visitors sitting at their assigned positions in the visitation room. It is a light that contains no grace. Sarah is smaller in it. That is the first thing I notice, through the glass, that she has contracted somehow, that the practiced expansiveness of the concerned daughter, the performed authority of a woman who believes she is running things, has been replaced by something diminished. The orange jumpsuit is doing some of this work, but not all of it. The rest is the particular shrinkage of a person who has had their story removed. I sit down. I don't wait for her to find her opening. I slide the copy of the disinheritance filing against the glass. The pages are neat, numbered, Elias's firm's letterhead at the top, the clean, formal language of a document that means exactly what it says and has no room in it for interpretation or appeal. You underestimated me, Sarah. I keep my voice low. Not because I am ashamed of what I am saying, but because this is a private conversation between a mother and a daughter, and it will be the last one, and some things deserve the dignity of not being shouted. You saw a trembling hand and thought you saw a trembling mind. I look at her through the glass, at the face I have known for 44 years, the face I watched come into the world, the face I taught to read and argued with over curfews and drove to school and sat across from at 30 years of holiday dinners. You were the only fraud I couldn't solve for 40 years. That ends today. I stand up. She opens her mouth. Her eyes are filling and her jaw is working and she is assembling something, an appeal, a justification, a version of events in which she is still, somehow, the wronged party. I walk away before she finishes. I have run out of pity. I used the last of it in the kitchen, watching her choose greed over a 3-second flicker of guilt. You only get so many choices in a life, and the choices you make in those 3-second windows are the ones that define the rest of it. She made hers. The news runs it on Thursday morning. Pacific Northwest elder fraud case exposes Ponzi scheme. I watch it with black coffee and a degree of professional detachment that I would not have thought I was capable of 48 hours ago. Brian's consulting firm, S&B Holdings, the entity that was to have received the Parker estate for $10, turns out to have been functioning as a vehicle for a scheme involving 6 other investors over the previous 3 years, all of whom will now be lining up for restitution. Sarah's boutique, which I knew was failing but did not know was this encumbered, is being seized by creditors who have been waiting for the asset consolidation that Brian apparently promised them would arrive by the end of the quarter. Because they used my credit as collateral for their most recent round of financing, fraudulent applications that the investigators found in Brian's digital records, signed with the forged version of my signature that Sarah had been practicing on my stationery. The state has frozen their remaining personal assets pending restitution proceedings. They came to liquidate me. They have managed, with a thoroughness that is almost elegant in its completeness, to liquidate themselves. I sip my coffee. I watch the television. I think, the numbers never lie. People do. And the numbers are extremely patient. The grandfather clock is too loud. I noticed this on a Friday afternoon, 3 weeks after the arrest, sitting in the study with a book I had been intending to read for 2 years. The ticking has always been present. It was present when Leonard was alive, when the house was full, when there were other sounds to balance it. Now it is simply the loudest thing in a house that has become, without fully announcing itself as such, too large. 2 acres. Mahogany study. Hardwood floors that have already carried 1 generation of damage and reclamation and will carry more if I stay. The sideboard where things used to be and are now replaced, the ceramic set in industrial beige that I donated to the Goodwill on the day after the arrests but whose absence still marks the space where my grandmother's silver service used to live. I call the realtor on a Monday. She is recommended by a neighbor, professional, without any prior relationship to Sarah or Brian or anyone connected to the past 3 months of my life. I list the property at market value, not desperate pricing, not sentimental pricing, but the clean, accurate number that the house is worth, assessed by a woman with no agenda. Then I go to the silver cabinet and I call the antique dealer. And the estate company. And the storage facility on Route 9 where I make arrangements for Leonard's books until I know where they're going. I am stripping my own house. The difference, and I hold this distinction carefully, because it matters, is that the money is going into a private trust structured by Elias with a beneficiary designation that contains exactly 1 name and is overseen by a trustee who is not my daughter. The trust is mine to access and mine alone, requiring my signature in person, with photo identification, at a branch location. I am becoming light. Mobile. The particular dangerous mobility of a woman who has decided that she does not need 2 acres of Pacific Northwest real estate to know exactly who she is. The Tacoma Harbor on a Thursday morning smells of salt and diesel and open water, the specific compound of a departure point, the smell of distance being made available. I stand at the railing of the Mediterranean Star and I let the Pacific wind find my silver hair and I hold my face into it with the specific pleasure of a woman who has been indoors too long. The ship is enormous and the engines are already running beneath the deck, a vibration I can feel through the soles of my shoes and up through the bones of my feet, a deep and powerful steadiness. My longines is synced to the departure time, 11 a.m. 30 minutes. My cabin is first class, which Leonard would have called extravagant and which I call accurate, an accurate representation of what I have earned and what I intend to spend the next several months doing with it. The suitcase I packed contains 8 new silk blouses, pressed and perfect, purchased at a shop in Seattle with no coffee stains anywhere near them. My passport is in the inside pocket of my jacket, where it has been since the morning the investigators returned it to me and I held it in both hands for a moment longer than strictly necessary. No one can take it. I look at my right hand on the railing. The tremor is there. It is always there, has been there for 2 years and will be there for the rest of my life with increasing frequency, the particular signature of a nervous system that has its own agenda. I watch it for a moment, the slight, rhythmic shudder, the cadence of a body telling the truth about itself. It is not a weakness. It is a cadence. A rhythm. The particular honest frequency of a woman who knows exactly what she can and cannot do and has built her entire counterattack on a precise, unsentimental assessment of both. I held the pen and let the tremor write help in the baseline of a fraudulent signature. I held the button camera steady enough to record a predated evaluation. I held my face neutral through 3 weeks of calculated diminishment and emerged from the other side of it standing upright with a micro SD card in my hand. The tremor was there for all of it. It was never the problem. The engines changed their register at 11 o'clock exactly, deepening, settling into the purposeful thrum of a vessel in motion, and the dock begins its slow recessional, the ropes coming loose, the gap of dark water widening between the hull and the pier. I have a glass of champagne. I didn't plan it, specifically. I didn't stand here rehearsing the image of myself with champagne as the harbor receded, because that would be the behavior of someone performing their own freedom rather than simply living it. But a steward offered, and the vintage was excellent, and it seemed accurate to the moment in the way that accurate things sometimes simply present themselves. The bubbles are sharp and cold. The shoreline recedes with the patient deliberateness of something that is done with you, and I watch it go with the steady gaze of a woman who has looked at things she needed to see for a very long time and is now, for the first time in 3 years, looking at something she has chosen. The case of Edith Parker is closed. The evidence is filed, the culprits are behind bars, the documents are signed and sealed and entered into the record where they belong. The victim, the shuffling, vacant-eyed, stained blouse, mismatched socks victim they needed me to be, has ceased to exist. She was a professional performance, and the performance is over, and the curtain is down, and the woman standing at the railing of the Mediterranean Star with a glass of champagne and a Longines watch and a tremor that is simply a cadence is a different thing entirely. She is a woman who is very much alive. She is a woman who has, in the course of the last 3 weeks, caught the only fraud that ever genuinely eluded her. She has documented it, built the case, walked it to the authorities, and is now departing the jurisdiction with a passport, a trust, and the particular open horizon feeling of a problem completely solved. I take a sip. The bubbles break against the roof of my mouth, cold and precise and exactly right. The future is not a threat. The future is an open investigation, and I have always been at my best with a blank page in front of me. I may have a tremor, but I never lose my grip. If you made it to this moment, thank you for listening all the way through. Most people bail before the bill comes due. But here, the bill always comes due. What started as humiliation and disrespect ended with receipts, truth, and a payoff they never saw coming. If you want more stories where karma shows up without mercy, hit subscribe and come back for the next one. Now tell me in the comments, what was the most disgusting thing they did? What crossed the line for you?